Friday night we gather round, Daniel's here to break it down. Chessboard magic in the air, Fischer's moves we all will share. Coaches talking every play, teaching skills along the way. Feel the thrill with every game, Bobby's legacy remains the same. Fischer Friday, let's all cheer. Chess and wisdom by our ear. Champion spirit never gone. History lives in every pawn. Daniel's passion lights the stream, analyzing Fischer's dream. Queens and knights and castles too, every match a deja vu. Tactical genius on display, kings and bishops lead the way. Endgames full of flair and might, chessboard glowing in the night. Move by move we're drawn inside Fischer's world where legends ride. Strategy and brilliancy, lessons learned for you and me.
Welcome, ladles and jelly spoons, to King's Bishop Teaches Chess. I'm Coach Daniel, your host, and we are bringing another edition of the Fischer Friday video series with a game against Aleksandar Matanović at the Portoroz Interzonal tournament.
We're drawn inside Fischer's world where legends ride. Strategy and brilliancy, lessons learned for you and me.
And once again, welcome to King's Bishop Teaches Chess. I am King's Bishop, your international chess coach, and also an international grand patzer, as you know. But we all have fun together covering these games played by Bobby Fischer. And this was the 18th round of the Portoroz Interzonal. Portoroz, a city in Slovenia. And this game was played on September 4th, 1958, against Aleksandar Matanović, a Yugoslavian grandmaster and champion. Well, he was Serbian, but back in those days, it was still part of Yugoslavia. Matanović was born May 23rd, 1930, passed away August 9th, 2023, only over a year ago. And yes, he was a Serbian grandmaster. And did you know that he was the founding editor-in-chief of the Chess Informant? That's what we used before databases to keep up with all the latest important chess games. Now, you'll probably know, or maybe you don't know, so I'll tell you that Chess Informant is also behind the Encyclopedia of Chess openings. So Matanović played a very important role in our knowledge of chess. He was junior champion of Yugoslavia in 1948. He became a grandmaster in 1955. He was Yugoslavian champion in 1962, 69, and 78. He was runner-up in the years 1951, 56, 59, and 1967. And let's get right into the game. Pawn to e4, Bobby's best by test, as you know. And here we get pawn e5 from Matanović. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, the Rai Lopez opening, and a6, Paul Morphy's defense. Bishop a4 is the Columbus variation. Knight f6, kingside castle, and we get a closed Spanish with bishop e7. Rook e1, pawn b5, bishop b3, kingside castles, pawn c3, pawn d6, pawn h3, controlling the g4 square and precluding any occupation thereof by our opponent's bishop or knight. This is Paul Kedis's variation. Knight a5, hitting the bishop, and the bishop retreats to c2, pawn c5, and we strike at the center with pawn d4. Mikhail Chigorin's defense is played with queen c7, and we get the queen's knight coming to d2. Here bishop d7 was played, and the knight to f1, from whence it can emerge either to g3 or e3, depending on the situation. After king's rook to e8, it is e3 indeed for this knight, and pawn g6 is the Yugoslav system played by the Yugoslav champion. Now pawn takes the king's pawn, marked inaccurate, but that's an inaccurate inaccuracy. As you know, we take issue with Ficklebot here on the King's Bishop channel when it comes to inaccuracies, and Ficklebot doesn't seem to always agree with itself either. We get pawn takes the pawn, knight to h2, facilitating a pawn push here, and the queen's rook comes to d8, staring menacingly in the face of our queen, threatening a discovered attack. So get out of that line of fire with queen f3. Bishop e6 is played, and knight h to g4 puts the question to its counterpart. That question is answered with a trade. Knight takes knight. Now knight takes knight, marked inaccurate, and more popular is the move indicated right here. You see, h takes g4 is best, says the Ficklebot, and this is the most popular move, which is usually answered by knight c4, hitting this knight, but now the trade is not made. Instead, knight to d5 is played, and after bishop takes the knight, pawn takes the bishop, opening the door for this rook, showing the most common line now. The knight retreats to b6 to super attack this pawn, and rook to d1 super defends with the help of the queen. Rook to d6, and we'll show no more in this most commonly played line. Let's go back. Instead, Bobby capturing the knight with his knight, and bishop takes the knight. Now pawn takes the bishop here, and it seems that white is slightly better here. Let's actually put the eval bar up. I should have put that up earlier, and see what it tells us. Dead equal, according to the eval bar. But I felt like white was a touch better with the bishop pair, and black's knight way out on the rim looking dim. So just to give you an idea why I said white had a slight advantage. c4, g3, knight b7, king g2, knight c5, rook to h1. That pawn susceptible to capture. Pawn f6, marked inaccurate. Knight d3 being called for, putting the question to our bishop. And white has to also beware of a potential knight e1 at some point, which would be a fork of the king and the queen, wouldn't it? Knight d3, the best move. f6 was actually played. Bishop e3 was played. Rook f8 with the idea of rook f7. That's given a check mark. The bot calling for queen c6, and I thought queen c6 to be superior indeed. The idea of knight e6 is also appealing to vacate this square for the bishop. Queen c6 was called for. But what about knight e6? Vacate c5 for the bishop. And I'm also given a star for that move. Rook f8 chosen by Matanović, and queen's rook to d1 right here. b4. b4 interrogating the knight being called for by the bot. Perhaps you can also put the question to the pawn here with b3. And we get a star for that. Doing pretty good so far with the Ficklebot. Queen's rook to d1 is the move chosen by Bobby, and rook takes rook. Rook takes rook. Rook to d8. Bishop takes the knight on c5. Queen takes the bishop. And you can see over here on the eval bar, this is an equal position. Rook takes the rook check. Bishop takes the rook. Queen to d1, taking the open file. Bishop b6, battery attacking the f-man. Queen to d2, defense. King to f8, pawn a4, looking to bust up the queen's side here. King e7, getting his king active in the endgame. g5, more attempts to break up the position. Pawn takes pawn. Queen takes pawn is check. King f7. Queen back to d2 to renew the defense of the f-man. King f6. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop d1. And we had an amazing game here. The draw offer was made and accepted. What a game. Barely anything to say during that game, was there? I made 5 comments at the most, right? Well, let me give you the numbers. Bobby Fischer's accuracy was 98.5. Aleksandar Matanović's accuracy was 99. And they were both awarded single game ratings of 3,100. What a competitive game. Both players with an amazing opening and middle game and tremendous precision in the end game. Until next time, I'm Coach Daniel. Have a great day and play some great chess. Bye now.